All right, class. So in this video, we're going to revisit the process we use to come up with an equation for a line based on two coordinates. So if you remember, we came up with a process that we have to do every time when we're given this situation. The very first thing we need to do is to find our slope, okay? So let's look at this first one. And I'm going to go through and label this as x1, y1, x2, y2 to start. And I think that's probably helpful for a lot of you to make sure you label. So if we remember, when we're finding the slope, or m, it's our difference of y over difference of x. So now that we already had gone ahead up top and labeled our x1, y1, x2, y2, it's basically a fill in the blank situation. We're going to take what we were given and fill in the blanks using what we know. So if we continue this, switch the color here. y2 minus y1. So we get 5 minus negative 5 over x2 minus x1. So 20 minus 18. Okay. If I go ahead and simplify this, if we remember, we'll go back to our, anytime we minus, it's the same thing as adding. So in this case, we got 5 plus 5 in the numerator, which is 10, and 20 minus 18, which is 2. So remember, I said we can keep them as fractions, but we have to have a fraction in reduced form, a simplified fraction. So what we're looking at right now with 10 over 2 is not simplified, right? So 10 over 2, we know if we think of this as division, which it is, 10 divided by 2, well, that is 5. So in this case, we find a slope of 5. That's step one. So step one each time is to go through and find your slope. Okay, step two is now we need to take our equation, which is y equals mx plus b. And again, similar to what we did to find the slope, we're going to fill in some blanks, okay? So we just found slope. We found the slope to be 5. We're going to go back up to what was given to us here at the top. And these two coordinates, these two ordered pairs, 18 and negative 5 and 20 and 5. We're going to use one of those pairs to help us find our y-intercept, our b. In this case, I'm going to use the positive numbers. I see a 20 and a 5. They're both positive. I think that's a better bet for me. Can you use 18 and negative 5? Yes, of course you can. You're dealing with a negative. And for me, I'm going to stick with only dealing with positive numbers. So if I go and fill in my missing pieces, I know that I need to fill in my y, and my y is 5. My x was 20. B is what we're trying to find, okay? So now I'm going to go through and simplify what I can. So I've got 5 equals, well, 5 times 20 is 100, plus b. Now I've got a one-step equation, one step. So in order to get b by itself, I need to remove this. Since it's positive 100, I'm going to subtract 100 from both sides. When I do that on the right, and again, it's because I want to make sure I have balance, meaning whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So in this case, it's subtracting 100. Okay, so on the right side, the 100 is going to go away and leaving us with b, which is what we want. We want to find that y-intercept. On the left, I've got 5 minus 100, okay? So 5 minus 100 is going to give me negative 95. Okay, so if we go back and look at what we've got a slope, we've got a y-intercept, so the only thing left to do is to write our equation. So if I need it in y equals mx plus b, well, y equals, my m is 5, x minus 95. And that is our first one. Again, if we can, now we go and check, right? We can go and check these to make sure that this is correct. Meaning if I substitute my 20 in for my x right there, I've got y equals 5 times 20 minus 95. Or y equals 100 minus 95. And I know that that is equal to 5. So if I go back up top just to make sure, when I substituted 20 for x, I should get a value of 5 for y, which is what I did. So our equation, y equals 5x minus 95, is going to be correct. All right. Now if we go and look at this side. So repeat the same process. Step 1, find the slope. Step 2, find the y-intercept by substituting some numbers. And then step 3 is just to write the equation. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is go through and write this as x1, y1, x2, y2. So my slope, m, is equal to negative 15 minus 0 over 14 minus 4. Again, we can label x1, y1 any way we want, right? We could have labeled 14 and negative 15 as our x1 and y1. That part doesn't make a difference. We just have to be consistent, okay? We have to keep them the same, meaning we can't do x1, y2 and x2, y1. It has to be the same thing, okay? So now if I go ahead and finish this, I get negative 15 over 10. Again, I said we can keep it as an improper fraction. It just needs to be simplified. So in this case, negative 15 over 10, well, that's going to simplify to negative 3 over 2. So step 1, find the slope. Step 2, to find the y-intercept, we need to do some substituting, okay? We'll switch up the color. So we know that y equals mx plus b. We just found m. We've got several choices up here. We got 4, 0, and 14, negative 15. Well, guess what I'm going to pick? I'm going to pick 4 and 0 because I want to work with small numbers. And anytime I can work with 0 or 1, that's either an x or a y, I am going to choose that. So again, now we're playing the fill in the blanks game, right? So if I look at that set, my y is 0. So now 0 equals negative 3 over 2 times x. And if I go back over there, my x is 4 plus b. So I need to simplify this right side. So if I think of this, 4 is the same thing as 4 over 1. And if I multiply that across, I get negative 12 over 2 plus b. Well, again, now I look at it and I say, okay, well, I know that negative 12 over 2, or negative 12 divided by 2, is the same thing as negative 6 plus b. One-step equation. So to find b, I need to send this to the left side of the equal sign by doing the opposite. So in this case, I'm adding 6. When I do that, I'm left with b equals, and 0 plus 6 is 0. I've got my slope. I've got my y-intercept. The last thing I do is just write my equation. So y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 6. Again, if I want to make sure my answer is correct, I go back to my coordinates and substitute them in, okay? Substitute them in. So 4 and 0. X is 4, y is 0. So if I substitute that in, I get y equals negative 3 over 2 times 4 plus 6. Well, we knew what this was. We found this. We know that that comes out to be negative 6 plus 6. Well, negative 6 plus 6 would mean y would have to be 0. So when x is 4, y is 0. And if I go back up there, that is exactly what we had. So our answer of negative 3 over 2x plus 6 is going to be correct. Now, what we just did right here is really the same thing we do when we go down here and look at it like this, right? When we look at a graph and we're asked to write an equation based on the graph, well, we need to identify some things. We need to find our slope, we need to find our y-intercept, and then we can write our equation. So if we look at this first one, the first thing I want to notice is my interval of my y is going up by 1. So it looks like my y, the line crosses my y at the point 0, 5. So my y-intercept is 5. And I'm going to even scroll in right here. Now, if I look, it looks to me that if I go across my x, the next intersection, meaning where I can easily find a point, is right over here at 5, 2. Okay? So if slope is rise over run, okay, I'm going down 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So one thing we have to remember is when we go down, that is negative. When we go right, that is positive. So in this case, our slope is negative 3/5. Okay? Any move down or left is negative, and any move right or up is positive. So in this case, our slope is negative 3/5. Well, just like above, once we get our slope and our y-intercept, the last part of writing the equation is very easy. So negative 3/5 x plus 5. So it's another way, right? So being able to write the equation of a line visually, meaning from a graph or from 2 points, is absolutely important. So we need to make sure we know how to do both. So we go over and look at our second example over here, okay? Again, I'll zoom in a little bit. The line crosses the y at negative 5. So again, we want to think about slope, y-intercept, and what our equation is. Well, our y-intercept is 0, negative 5. Okay? Now I want to find another point, really, right? So it looks to me like the next one we look at is right there. So in this case, I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up 5, and right 1, 2, 3. So again, any move up or right is positive. So in this case, I'm going up 5 over 3. Well, last step, the easy part. Combine my m and my b into my equation to come up with y equals 5/3 x minus 5. So if I zoom out here, everything we did, so 1 and 2, when we were given 2 coordinates and asked to write an equation, is the exact same thing, really, that we have to do in 3 and 4. It's just doing it and looking at it a different way, right? So 3 and 4, you've got a graph. You still need to write an equation. Up here, they just give you 2 points and no visuals. But we could certainly also graph this if we needed to. But we also want to make sure we know how to do this mathematically. So to recap, if we want to recap 1 and 2, the most important part, step 1 is we want to find our slope. We do that by finding our difference in y over our difference in x. Labeling our coordinates x1, y1, x2, y2 is also a great strategy that ensures we won't get our values mixed up when we go to find our slope. Once we find our slope, it's a fill-in-the-blanks game, meaning we take one of our coordinates, use one of the coordinates along with our slope to come up with a one-step equation to find our y-intercept. And once we have our y-intercept, we combine our m and our b, and we write our equation. 2 ways shown here how we can take either coordinates or a graph and write an equation in slope-intercept form. Hopefully this helps, and we will catch you on the next video.